and welcome to the final conference presentation on critical self-reflection in social work practice. Reflection is reflection, isn't it? And I am Lynn Shaw, and I am joined by my colleagues and friends, Francine, Carter, and NaKaisha Tolbert-Banks, and we're going to introduce ourselves and tell you a little bit more about us. I currently am an associate professor at the University of Indianapolis. I teach in the Phyllis Lynn Department of Social Work, and I am the NSW field director. I teach in the foundation year of our 2-year regular standing program. And I thought it was interesting, a little bit ago, I was thinking about my credentials, and I am a licensed clinical social worker and a licensed clinical addictions counselor. But Francine and NaKaisha, I thought you'd get a kick out of this. So I was coming out of an anesthesia situation, and the nurse sitting next to me was going, "So I hear you're a doctor." And I'm thinking, oh, did she think medical doctor? So I went, yes, I do. And all right, and proceeds to say, well, where did you get your doctorate? And I, under anesthesia effects, start off rattling all my degrees. So I said, I have a doctorate of education from Ball State University with a cognate in executive leadership and public service. And I have a master's in social work from IU School of Social Work and a bachelor's in social sciences from IU at Kokomo. And I have an associate's degree from the University of Indianapolis in paralegal studies. And the nurse looked at me and went, and now you're teaching at UIndy, so you've come full circle. I said, yeah, and I plan to retire from there. So I was like, so those are my credentials. My area of practice predominantly has been in mental health, healthcare, working with community development, professional development, and training. And I am very happy to be a part of this conference. I've been able to speak at this conference numerous times over the years of practice, and today bring you a study on critical self-reflection. So now I'd like to punt over to Francine, and you can introduce you.
Thank you very much. I am Francine Carter. I'm also a professor at the Phyllis Lynn Department of Social Work at the University of Indianapolis, and I am in the bachelor's program. I have my bachelor's and my master's from IU. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm also a certified professional coach. Got my certification from IPEC, as well as my professional certified coach designation from the International Coach Federation. And my career started out in the nursing home industry with elderly and ended up in the social work department at UIndy. I also have experience in employee assistance programs, as well as owning my own coaching practice called Action Coaching and Training. NaKaisha, take it.
Woo! So here I am. Welcome, welcome. I'm excited to be here with Lynn and Francine. I am NaKaisha Tolbert-Banks, bachelor's in social work from Ball State University, master's in social work from Indiana University. Like Francine, I am a certified empowerment coach with coaching certification through IPEC. Also, like Lynn, a certified laughter yoga leader, as well as an Energy Leadership Index Master Practitioner. So all of that to say, I love people, working with people. I'm currently founder and owner of Duo Empowerment Services, providing clinical counseling services with my LCSW and LCAC, and also coaching and a lot of laughter empowerment stuff. So talks, workshops, laughter sessions, and work has been primarily in mental health, which I love. And you'll hear us tying in all of those pieces in today's presentation. So I'm excited. Hopefully you're excited to be here with the three of us as we give you some good information and tidbits. To you, Lynn.
Thanks. It's so neat to hear about our common themes. I too have a coaching background, as you mentioned, the laughter work, and it's when the three of us came together and thought about what we wanted to share with our colleagues, wow, the synergy was amazing. So let's dive in. Critical self-reflection. So here's our, what I call the alleged agenda. leaving room for, of course, organic, spontaneous, who knows what's going to happen as we go through our presentation. So we're going to introduce what is critical self-reflection and how can it be impacting in a social work practice. So I'm going to review with you a study that I did and give you a snapshot of that study today. We're going to explore what the outcome of that study was, and Francine's going to pick up with the lived experience of a participant. And then NaKaisha is going to lead us through some psychological introspection and connecting this all to practice. So your biological breaks, these 90 minutes, are on you. You determine when you need to take a break for yourself. We hope that you'll take us with you in some capacity, you know, whether you put us on audio or just let us hear. Well, we don't need to hear, but we need to just support your self-care during this presentation as well. So that's our agenda. So moving right along, what is critical self-reflection and why in the world did I even pick that as a topic? Well, interestingly, at the time that this study occurred, I was actually doing more coaching, teaching a lot. I've actually been teaching in higher ed. I'm starting my 16th year, I can't believe it, and my 7th year at UIndy. And so when I was doing this study, it was actually a professor who said to me, why don't you do something around coaching? And I thought, really? I can? Is that okay? I mean, I'm in education, social work education. And she said, yes. And so as I started thinking about what I wanted the phenomenon to be, critical self-reflection came to me in a number of ways. One is that I think all of my career and even through all of my education, I have been a critical reflector. I know we talk a lot about critical thinking. We want our clients to be critical thinkers. We want ourselves to be critical thinkers. As an educator, it's part of our university values that we instill critical thinking into our lesson plans and into our curriculum. But I always counter with, well, what about critical reflection? Then I think that's just as important and significant to our learning and understanding of events and life experiences and who we are and what our beliefs are with reflection, with thinking and reflection. So as I explored what really is critical self-reflection, I came across another study that was done with a relationship between the coach and the coachee. And that particular study was on critical reflection. And the recommendation at the end of that study was to explore critical self-reflection. And I actually had an opportunity to speak with the writer of that study. And I said, what did you mean by that? So I can have a better understanding. He goes, we talk a lot about the relationships between the coach and the coachee. And in our field, the social worker and the client, the social worker and the system. And he said, but what do we do about self-reflection? And I said, okay. So after that conversation, I sat down and I thought, you know, when I went through my initial coursework in my doctorate degree, which was just a few years ago, I thought I really identify with transformative learning theory. There was just something about that theory that just, I went, this is what we do as social workers. This is what I do as an educator and social worker. And we have so many theories that we talk about in social work and other disciplines, but the adult learning theory around transformative learning theory really struck me. And so James Mesereau is the person credited with a lot of the work around critical self-reflection and critical reflection, and identifying it as questioning the integrity of deeply held assumptions and beliefs based on prior experience. And with transformative learning theory, which critical reflection is at the foundation of that, I want to share with you something that Mesereau said. And in working with your clients, saying that when we go through a disorienting event, then we're more likely to revisit and revise our underlying assumptions and adopt a new paradigm and use this new paradigm to revisit and revise their knowledge and a great new knowledge. So when I thought about that, I thought critical self-reflection is an introspective process diving deeper into an experience resulting in meaning. So the study itself was actually working with, now out of the 5 that responded to the opportunity, 3 had their master's in social work degree. So they were coming through the lens of social work into their study as well as their coach training. I chose a qualitative study and the method was phenomenological. And the reason I chose phenomenological is because I really liked how it was the lived experience of the participants, but it was all about what happened in the moment. And it wasn't about it wasn't related to emerging a theory, it was simply all about the reflective experience as they took on the phenomenon of critical self-reflection. So another person that influenced me in my work and still does today is Stephen Brookfield. And Stephen Brookfield has been in education for a number of years and contributed widely to the idea of using critical incident questionnaires. Now, in our training, critical incident may refer to something heightened and it's a crisis and we move into crisis debriefing. But what critical incident questionnaire is a tool that simply 5 questions that Dr. Brookfield would use at the end of every one of his classes. And then he would ask the students to anonymously fill out those 5 questions. And that would help him get feedback on how his class went and helped him either course direct or continue whatever he chose to do. So I actually was introduced to these critical incident questionnaires through one of my professors who used them in her coursework, and we would anonymously fill those out as well. And so with some modification, I thought, let's see if we could use these questionnaires to generate some of the feedback and data that we would actually be able to analyze through the study. In addition to the questionnaires, each of the coaches were asked to submit 4 journal summaries. Now, one of the things we know in critical reflection is that writing, when we ask our clients to keep a journal, we ask our clients to write a response to an experience that happened. And so writing has proven to strengthen the reflective experience by creating artifacts of the ideas that people come up with. So similarly, a very common practice with qualitative research is to use journal summaries, use type of reflections, and also then the semi-structured interviews. So the course of this study, as it said, was 8 weeks. And in that 8 weeks time, I was asking each of those coaches in their practice to fill out this questionnaire, send me a summary every 2 weeks, and then participate in the interview at the end. So in recruiting participants, what we did was a snowball sampling, and out of that, then I looked for coaches who met the criteria that they were certified. Most of them were typically through the International Coach Federation. Active practice, and then active practice was defined as a minimum of 5 clients weekly. And then over 100 hours of coaching documented, and willing to participate without compensation, willing to further the practice and the studies. So in the data collection, what I did was after the coaches completed a critical incident questionnaire, after each coaching session over that period of 8 weeks, and then they completed their journal summary and I received that. And then I interviewed them at the end of the 8 weeks. I conducted the interviews personally and I transcribed the interviews so that I could hear their voices. I could hear with that transcription and all. And before I leave this part and pass the baton to Francine to talk about some of the outcomes of this study, I just want to say that I could not have anticipated the impact of the study on me because I was bracketing myself as a coach, as a social worker, as an educator. I had to put that aside and I had to just be very, very present. So when the coach's journal summaries would come to me in an email, I would skim through it and then put it aside. I'd skim through it and put it aside. Boy, was that hard because I really wanted to just delve in. There was such rich data that came through those journal summaries. And it was really interesting that, as I move into analysis actually, that when I would read their responses, I was just immediately struck. So I had to be really careful about bracketing, a terminology that we use in qualitative research. So here are the questions that we used in the study. I say we just because I think the coaches and I are in a collaborative experience. I know it was my study, but it was a very much collaboration. So at what moment in this session did you feel most engaged? Did you feel most distanced? What action that anyone in the session took that you found most affirming or helpful? What action did you find most puzzling or confusing? And then what about the session that surprised you the most? And this could be your own reactions or something that someone did or anything else. And just as an aside, I actually use these same questions in the journals that my students in field education do. So in the foundation practicum that I teach, the students are answering these questions every other week related to their experience at their agency. So as I mentioned, I transcribed the interviews. Yes, I was a legal secretary after I graduated from UND and spent 6 years in law offices. And boy, was that great foundation work for doing this study and transcribing interviews. So the journal summaries and interview transcripts were reviewed, they were coded, and then the themes emerged rather quickly. In fact, so quickly I was thinking, I hope this is right. Well, as we know from research, it's whatever is happening in your experience with that. But the supportive data, I felt very confident that the participants' experiences took really the bulk of my time because they were very thorough in filling out those journal summaries. In fact, it was rather interesting when I got to the interviews, it was almost anticlimactic because they had poured so much into their journals and into the process. And I still feel, even as I'm sharing this with you, so indebted to the participants. The ones who were social workers said to me, literally, we want you to succeed. So we want to finish this study with you because we love that social workers are doing research. And so we want to help you. And I was like, wow. I mean, even saying this, I get goosebumps already, still again, all these years later. So that's the snapshot of the study and what happened with it. So this is an opportunity for us just to kind of pause. And, you know, one of the things that we want to connect with you throughout this entire presentation is that critical self-reflection allows us just to kind of step into us. And even though I've set the study up and I'm going to punt to Francine here in a moment, we just wanted to give you a moment to slow down too. So I just thought maybe it'd be helpful if you could just take a deep breath in with me and then exhale it. And then exhale. And just relax, let those shoulders come down a little bit. Boy, we just really don't take that time to look in the mirror sometimes, other than when we're just quick on the dash and let's see what we go. And I was thinking about how in school, all of us going either getting our BSW or our MSW, and it was making sure we had our assignments done, making sure that we had our papers done, making sure that practicum was set up, making sure this, making sure that. In fact, I just had students this morning in class for their first semester of a 2-year program. And the first thing I did, I said, tell me how you're acclimating just after the first week. I just want to check in with you for that. And just taking that moment to pause and to kind of reflect. Because there's really 3 ways to reflect. 1 is the content. How did you acclimate? 2 is the process. And, you know, based upon how we perceive. And then another way that we can look at is the premise around it. So the pause, taking in a breath, just being aware of what we're doing and giving ourselves that time to just go, okay, so Lynn set this study up, now what? All right, so Francine or NaKaisha, any thoughts at this point?
Really appreciate these breaks. And like you said, Lynn, we're going to incorporate them throughout the presentation because we do get caught up in that hustle and bustle. And it is a great time for us to just self-reflect, even if just for a minute, to take that breath and regroup, right? And get back at it. So,
well, let's continue on then. And Francine, why don't you take it from here? And I can't wait to hear what you're going to say.
All right, thank you. So being a participant was wonderful. It was great because of, well, I'll tell you with all the findings. How's that? So what 5 themes that emerged from Lynn's study was structure and discipline, increased self-awareness, passionate purpose, our professional development, and the surprising one is the enhanced relationship, and maybe not so surprising, with ourselves, but the other piece that is surprising is with others. So I'm going to go and break each one of those down from my experience then and how I've incorporated it now. So with structure and discipline, first of all, the coaches, we all found that having this process to assess ourselves was so important. You know, we go through training and we're taught the SMART goals with our clients and how to help them with the action steps and how to hold them accountable and how to help them structure. But what we sometimes don't have for ourselves is our own process. And so what this provided with each one of those questions was to give us a chance to stop in between each one of our clients and to truly provide a structured discipline for us to review ourselves, how we were in that session. And what I also found was as I was going into those, I still kept the integrity of the study, yet I was making sure that anything that came across an additional question, an additional thought, I began to make it my own. And evidently that's what the other coaches did as well. And so that structure, that discipline provided us that process, provided us with a little creativity. And we recognized that we needed to keep it going and put it into other practices, which we ended up doing. And I know I definitely ended up doing, and I'm doing now with my students in the social work school. We all are helpers. As coaches, we're helpers, as social workers, we're helpers. But what this really made us understand even more was that there's such passion. So not only are we focused on our clients and our clients hitting their goals and doing well, but what I found was for me, I started getting even more passionate about my work because I found myself improving. And then my purpose became stronger. And the more that my skills began to get enhanced, the more excited I was for my clients. My clients could sense my passion. And the engagement process just bloomed. It just absolutely bloomed, as well as the relationship along the way. So while they were feeling good about hitting their goals, man, I was feeling good about improving myself and recognizing that my passion was just increasing along the way. You know, it brings us to our own self-awareness. I remember when Lynn said, you know, I want you to do these questions after each coaching session. And I thought, are you kidding me? I can't do that. I don't have time. NaKaisha will talk about that later on. But you know how we do it. You know how we do it. It's a back to back to back to back to back. We don't leave that time in between. If we do a quick potty run, we come back, because most of my coaching was on the phone. So we tend to do that. But what this did was it provided that process to slow us down. It slowed me down. It helped me to refocus. It helped me to take one client's stuff out and put it on the shelf and bring a presence back, which increased my passion. Are you getting this? Increased my passion, as well as recognizing, wow, I've got a nicer system. Not only am I slowing myself down and focusing better and preparing, but even during the sessions was finding that, whoa, I noticed that on that session, I don't want to do that on this session. So I began to even refocus and redirect myself during sessions instead of waiting till after. And it just goes to show that the development, that process, that structure, that discipline, I was watching myself develop and increasing that. As coaches, and through the program that NaKaisha and I went through, we had mentor coaches. And that's great, but once the program ends, and even in social work, we have supervision, but after supervision, do we really sit down with somebody? Do we really talk about how well we're doing? We tend not to. And so this was that built-in piece, and it helped us to really look at how are we assessing ourselves? How are we evaluating ourselves? We say we're going to do it, but yet we really don't. And none of our coaching schools had this. So we focus so much on our clients. We focus so much on the skills we have to help our clients. We forget on what's the process and the structure and the discipline to help us reflect on our stuff so that we can be better, and we can be better for our clients, but we can also be better. And we all of the participants, evidently from the reports of the study, is this needs to be taught in training schools. This needs to be taught in the coaching schools. This needs to be taught in School of Social Work. And we do to an extent, but do we absolutely incorporate this? And I've started incorporating these questions with my social work students so that they can have it from the start, from the get-go. And I have just found that the more introspection and the more reflection that I do, even in my classes, even with my clients still, and I just feel so much more passionate and so much more humble that there's so much more to do. So much more to do. And, you know, my home office, at the time I had a home office, so here I am doing my coaching. I've got 2 kids that are growing up. They're older now, but they were kiddos then. And I'm doing this reflection, and I'm all paying attention to my clients. And then, you know how we all do it. We hit the home floor and we forget, like, those skills that we should really kind of use, maybe with our family. And what I found myself doing was, it was translating. I was paying more attention to how I was showing up with my family, how I was showing up with my kids, how I was showing up with my spouse, my parents. And it really helped me to understand that I was not taking the time to truly listen. So it was that professional development piece, but also it really, truly began to enhance my relationship. And I saw my kids change. I saw them slow down. I saw them look at me differently. And it really enhanced, it truly enhanced our relationship. And it made me also, unfortunately or fortunately, realize I wasn't being as good to my family as I was to my clients. And that's not the way it needs to be. So it really increased the passion for me in just doing the project, doing the discipline itself. So that was my experience, and I'm still utilizing it. And I outed myself being in this study. So because I wanted to hear you all to hear what it was like from someone going through it. Instead of just hearing this was the study and these were the results, it really was impactful. And so this is really important for us to consider and to put into our day-to-day practice.
I really appreciate that you were willing to disclose that you were a participant in this study. When I asked Francine if she would share her experience, because she had shared so much with me, and I thought it's it's just great to be able to have someone who's actually done it to come forward and just say, wow, this is what is happening. And now we're teaching together. So who would have thunk, right? I kind of want to wrap up the study part, of course, with recommendations. And there were certainly limitations in the study. It was limited to 5, and all 5 identified as female. It would have been interesting to have had a more diverse population, and also representing different states. And although I will say the Midwest was represented. From the study, then one of my recommendations is to do a qualitative research and determine what the correlation is between the number of critical incident questionnaires and my particular finding. One of the things that Francine didn't mention is that I think you did 55 CIQs. Yes, so that's a lot. 8 weeks.
And, you know, when part of it was 5, at least 5 clients a week, my practice, I was lucky then to have, I say then because I'm not doing it on a full-time basis, I was lucky to have a very full practice. And that goes into the, what do you mean after each one of them? Yeah, but oh my gosh, I'm so glad I did it. So glad I did it.
3 of the 5 participants completed over 50 CIQs, and that's what I mean about this richness of not only the commitment, but also the willingness to give me such great data. We mentioned about injecting coaching training programs with some type of critical self-reflection model, whether it be CIQs, journaling, or whatever. But we also mentioned about, for this particular area of social work, Francine and I are using the incident questionnaires in our classes. Not all of them, but some of them. And because she teaches in BSW, then I think it's great that both programs can have that piece in it. And also, just taking a look at when we're looking at clinical supervision, we're going to talk about in a second, about the role that critical self-reflection can have in clinical supervision. And another recommendation was to develop an app. I mean, that's where we're at, right? App. So develop an app so that we can help professionals to utilize that introspective critical self-reflection activities. So what about social work practice? As we've been sitting here sharing with you, my thoughts just keep running every time I review with other social workers and have an opportunity to have this conversation. I just know more and more, especially as being a field director and working with some of you in agencies, clinical supervision is so important. I am still doing clinical supervision. Sometimes the site may not have an NSW available, so I pick up the supervision piece, and I do that hour with the student one-on-one. And I like it because it's important. It's important, but it also helps me to keep on my toes as well with my micro skills and coaching skills. So we do believe that this process can be used in other disciplines, and that supervision and field work, as I mentioned, is an opportunity to enhance our professional development. So next slide. So we wanted to take a pause here again. So NaKaisha, did you want to do something with laughter yoga, or something we could do right here as a pause and stretch and exhale?
Yeah, pause and stretch, exhale. I know you guys have been sitting and you've been taking it all in, and you've got your listening ears tuned in, which is awesome. One of the things that I like to do with clients is, even with my kiddos, I call it the 5-finger jam, right? So you get your 5 fingers up and going, you kind of moving your 5 fingers. So they're moving, you're breathing, you're kind of saying hi to the people on your screen. You might be saying hi to us. You get your other 5 fingers going up. You get to move in. Now we're saying hi with all 10. This is my jam. I call it the 5-finger jam. So it's just taking the time to do something silly, but you're getting things moving, right? The 5-finger jam.
Nice.
This is my jam, meaning this is my thing. I need to do it. I love it. So the 5-finger jam. So hello. My 5 fingers are saying hello to your 5 fingers and your other 5 fingers. So the 5-finger jam.
Well, before we segue over to you, NaKaisha, Francine, I had a question for you, and that is, you know, since the studies ended, and you've said that there was such an impact on you. It's been a few years since you were a participant, and you continue to move into education and working with students, but also still coaching and still doing community work. So, is there any element of this work that you did in the study that you would say has emerged even more so where you are today?
You know, I still use it teaching. After every class, I'm still evaluating. I'm still looking at what I could do when I lost track, especially now during Zoom classes. You know, it's completely different, and it makes you recognize that there are different skills you have to use. So it's helping me to recognize this is a skill I need to pay attention to on a Zoom class. This is the skill I need to pay attention to when the internet is breaking up and I can't get what I need across to the students. So it's helping me on that respect. And it's interesting, just this morning I was on a call with someone and they said to me, you know, I have a feeling you're a lot like me. And I said, how so? And they said, you seem very reflective. And, you know, I was like, wow, you got to be kidding me. You know, let's talk about the timing of all of this. And I realized then that it has increased my reflection. It has increased how I look inward, that introspection, and it's made me and continues to make me a better teacher.
The one thing, Francine, that I love that you shared was just the reflective piece about how going through the study allowed you to see yourself differently within your family. So kind of when you were talking about it, I could see you kind of dividing yourself with work and your family, your own personal time, right? And so taking that reflective time to really look at in coaching what we call the wheel of life, right? All of those different components of your life and maybe where there's some deficiencies. Where do I need to kind of shift things? Because that's what helps us to be kind of in that full circle, right? Everything's not always going to operate beautifully in this, you know, there's 20% here and 20% there and this beautiful pie, but sometimes it's like the pie that I made a pie a few weeks ago and I went to open up and the shell was all like broken up and stuff in the pan. And I'm like, well, we're still going to have pie. Like, and I threw the filling in there and we just called it pie crumble. And guess what? It crumbled onto the plate and it did even worse when we ate it. So we made a good situation out of what we had, right? But I love that you were able to see that piece in your reflection.
Thanks. And I shared before that my husband and I adopted our kiddos from foster care when they were 7 and 8. And so with that experience of what they've experienced early on, and then, you know, wanting to be a parent and becoming a parent through foster care, and then being a social worker and also being a coach, and then you've got clients that you're helping, and then you have to leave your office and there's more help, and then there's more psychological help. It can be extremely exhausting. And I found myself being more irritated with my kids. All they did was need help, just like my clients. Granted, I'm still their mom, but I got some pretty doggone good skills. That why aren't I using those at home? And so that's what also assisted me. And I could see my relationship with my daughters change and get so incredibly enhanced. And I know I said that before, but I want to say that again. And it's made a world of difference. My oldest daughter is now majoring in social work.
Well, we're going to segue to NaKaisha. I'm really excited for you to share what you brought us today, and the connection to critical self-reflection continues.
Absolutely. Thank you, Francine, for sharing about your experience with the study, and Lynn for sharing about the study, which is so critical for how we care for ourselves and just that critical self-reflection that we need to present us with insight. And so we're going to expand in this section a little bit more about introspection and how it is so critical, along with what Lynn shared within the study, to do this introspection. So introspect before you wreck yourself. We don't want you to wreck, so we want you to do this critical self-reflection and this introspection. So we're going to talk about why it's important to you. We're going to talk about creating a surefire self-care plan. So some of the things that you can do for you to ensure that you're taking care of you in the best way possible. We know that being providers in this field, it is critical for us to, number one, self-reflect, but also creating a self-care plan that works for us. So we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to talk about 3 keys to introspection, using it as a regular life tool. So how can we use this every day? So what we're sharing with you isn't just for today, it's for every day. How do you use this in life moving forward? So as we talked about critical self-reflection, now we're going to talk about psychological introspection, what that is. An individual evaluates their own mental health. One way that people are able to do this is really taking a look at what's going on with me mentally. Are there areas within my life that are being impacted by what's going on around me? So that's psychological introspection. One can also determine if there are any impairments through their mental health using this introspection. So it's just important. How am I doing? How am I feeling? What's going on? Especially now with so many rapid changes going on in today's society, it is critical to utilize this psychological introspection. So without introspection, I may be at risk for wrecking. You see this truck into this tree. We want to talk about why might the lack of introspection impair me? How might it impair me? So the truck and the tree, kind of symbolic. If you think about a vehicle, right? You're needing to get an oil change or tire rotation. If you never paid attention to your vehicle at all, and you just drove it, say that you drove it 60 miles an hour everywhere that you went, you never changed the oil, you never changed the tires, lights are flashing in the car, and you just think, oh, wow, pretty lights in the car. Right? Those lights are there for a reason. They're a signal that says something's going on. So our bodies are kind of like that light that flashes in your car to say, hello, pay attention to me. What's going on? So that introspection allows us to really take that inner look at ourselves to see where we are. And if we don't do this, that critical self-reflection that Lynn talked about earlier, this introspection, taking that inward look, we're at risk of wrecking.
If I can interject.
Absolutely.
This was the piece that really made sense for me in being able to do the critical self-reflection and how it impacted my personal life. Looking back now, I realize, had I not done that study, had I not participated, I wouldn't have reaped the benefits of being able to slow down at home, to being able to utilize that reflection and know how I was transferring it to home. And I think it really did help me to not wreck, because I was on a path, I really believed, with my kiddos especially, that I was going to wreck. And so recognizing that I slowed down and I was able to evaluate myself and how I was showing up with clients and how it impacted me at home and how I changed a lot of the ways that I interacted with my kiddos, it really, truly made a huge difference.
Thank you for sharing that, Francine. Lynn.
Well, I can piggyback on that too. And I was thinking, well, I did wreck. So,
No, yeah.
you know, it's even after the study, what comes to mind though is being involved with critical self-reflection from a place of not only the study, but also just application. I am much more aware of how I show up in meetings. How do I show up with my students? How am I showing up with my clients? How it's just the ongoing, because I do know what it feels like to have the lights go out. I mean, I share openly with my students in my 20s when I burned out and what that felt like. And I didn't ever want to feel like that again. And I've come close. As a social worker, it's just so easy to keep plugging away. And just yesterday, I was having correspondence with a woman who has spent her career studying the neuropsychology and the neuroscience around stress. And she said, I'm having the most difficult time right now. And I thought, we're not immune just because we take on a certain area and make it our area. And I've said for years that self-care is the missing competency. I just want to, let's just keep going because you've got some great things for us to look at.
I think it's so critical, the piece that Francine said about, knowing your family is there kind of waiting for you. And you're not able to recognize that until you take that time away to really look at where you are with everything. And sometimes I'll admit, kind of like Lynn, how spread thin we are, right? That we're giving of ourselves in so many different areas that we don't really know what that's like. Fortunately for Francine, she had this study to say, let me delve into this a little bit more and given that insight. So thank you both for sharing that. I'm sure there's so many that can probably say, yeah, that's me, right? Because we've all been there at some point. All right. So talking about the brain, our brain is very critical because that's where everything happens. If you notice the picture of this brain here, there's all sorts of stuff floating around in that brain. And that can be any of us on any given day. So the brain wraps into this piece of introspection and critical self-reflection by allowing us to look deeper into what we're thinking, right? That piece of what we're thinking will impact how we feel, how we move throughout our days. One of the questions here is the thought helpful? So what I'm thinking right now, is this thought helpful to me? Would I say this out loud, right? I know there have been times where I've said something and somebody's like, oh my God, I would not repeat that. Do not say that out loud. Or I hope you haven't said that to someone else. And I'm like, was it really that bad, right? But it takes you back to think, if someone's telling me to think about what I'm saying, then maybe there's something that they are able to see that I myself am not. Again, kind of going back to Francine talking about that piece about missing out with her family. Sometimes it's what the people around us are saying to us. The next question, would a friend say this to you? So the thoughts that we're thinking, that stinking thinking that starts to infiltrate our days, right? Our minutes, our weeks, that stinking thinking comes in. Would you say this out loud? Would you allow someone to say this to you? And then can you prove the thought to be true, right? So sometimes it's the gremlin thinking. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not going to be able to do this. And when we start to have those thoughts, they really can impact how we operate each day. So in retraining our brains, when we've done that critical introspection, self-reflection, we have to ask ourselves, what might be a better thought? Is there something better that I can say to myself in this moment? So for example, I'm a mom, I'm a social worker, I run a private practice. There are people needing my help, my services, they have questions. You're kind of doing everything here and there. A thought that I may have might be, I'm not a good mom, right? Oh, I'm not an efficient social worker. I've heard lots of my colleagues say that right now in this season. I don't feel sufficient. I don't feel like I'm doing a good job. And so a helpful thought that might just give us a little bit of a boost might be, I'm doing the best that I can, right? I'm doing the best that I can. Or, wow, I know that I've been good. This is a tough season and I'm still upright. Holy cow, like, look at this. I should be excited about this. I should be happy. I should be proud, right? So just taking a moment to think about what we're saying. What are the words that we're speaking out loud, even in our heads? Because those words can truly impact where we go, right? Are we driving into that tree, as you saw on the slide before? Or are we going to drive down the road slowly, however that sees fit? Maybe some detours, but it's okay. As long as we get to where we're going successfully and in the most healthy way possible. That's what's important. Self-care. I know everybody hears that. They're like, oh, self-care. We're social workers. We always hear about self-care. What do I need to do? Anything that helps you to take care of yourself. That's what you need to do. So this critical piece of self-care, it looks different for every single person. Every person that is here, every person that's present right now, you are a person that needs to incorporate some type of self-care into your life. Does it have to be every single day? No. Once a week, once a month, it may vary, right? If you're doing something once a day, it could be 5 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day, once a week, once a month, but make sure that you're doing something. So we wanted to make sure that we incorporated some different little pointers for you, things to think about. In the first corner, you can see a young lady that's praying or meditating, just taking some alone time, some quiet time. It's so critical, especially in going in our day-to-day. We're used to doing the same things. We wake up at a certain time, we do this, we brush our teeth, we take a shower, we eat breakfast, we're running with coffee out the door or jumping in front of the computer nowadays, right, to sit down for a meeting or whatever's going on. And sometimes we need that quiet time for our brains to just slow down and say, whew, I'm glad NaKaisha's taking a break. She's slowing down. Gives our brain that time to recalibrate. Cute little Pandy in the corner. Panda's up in the tree. I would love to be there right now, up in a tree, just relaxing, hanging out. Whether it's sleep or rest, both are extremely critical, okay? Taking that time, again, to just slow things down, as you heard Francine talking about earlier, being able to know that she needed to slow down in some areas. How many of us take that time to really do that introspection to say, are there things that I need to let go of, right? I've aged a few years since I got my first social work degree and definitely my second. I don't move as fast as I used to. I can't do as much as I used to do in the course of a day because I get tired and sometimes I get grumpy, but that's things that people can relate to, right? So maybe it might be time for a change. Some changes may make you really excited, and there may be others that may make you cry. Why? because it's the change that's necessary to keep you afloat.
As I look at your pictures and as you're going through this, we talked about creating the culture of self-care.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when we look at things that we can do, I think that we need to look at your thoughts here as a culture, that, you know, this is something that we design and create, like you said, that fits for us. I'm always reminded, this happened a long time ago as a practitioner, but I'm always reminded when, because I focused a lot on treating people with anxiety and depression, and mood disorders. And so there was always this idea that we would give our clients a list of things to do to affect change in their lives. And of course, we still do that with different things and interventions. But I always came back to, if I am clinically depressed, if I have a major depressive episode, that list doesn't fit my world right now. I might be able to open the shades that day, and that's all I do. I might be able to get out of bed and do, I take care of my physical needs that day, and that's all I do. And as I worked with folks, we worked on creating that time for a change for a list, but it wasn't a list of 10 things. It wasn't a list of 5 things. A lot of times it was 1.
Yeah.
And I always went for the 85%. If 5 out of 7 days a week you hit your mark, that's success.
That's right.
I just wanted to interject about the cultural piece of it, from a learning experience, and also from working for ourselves, but also working with others, and how self-care is a part of that.
And the critical piece about what Lynn just shared is if we go back to the brain, the thoughts that we think, right? Lynn says, perfect example, if you're clinically depressed, right? Or you have a huge amount of anxiety that hinders you from doing a whole lot, getting up and opening the blinds may be the biggest win that you've got for the day. And that is success, right? So taking the little wins, again, how we care for ourselves is going to look different for every single person. And depending upon what you're going through in your life, a lot of your thoughts and how you handle your days may be dependent upon what you're going through. There are some days where I have more energy than others. Is there a reason? Sometimes there's a reason and sometimes there isn't. But knowing, what do I need to do in that change? And again, this change may be day to day. It could be the year, it could be the month, right? But knowing what works for you. I'll throw in here that comparison piece, to compare yourself to someone else, because, well, Francine's done 40 different, presentations in a week, and I've only done 2, right? But those 2 may have been very powerful for me and the max that I could do this week. And so making sure that we're not comparing ourselves to other people, because we don't know their situation like they don't know ours. So taking that into consideration when you're thinking about change. This word no, I love this. No. I don't know how many times I always said yes. If you look at the word no, there's a million yeses in there. That we don't necessarily always say no when we need to. And as we talked about change previously, it may be time to change from saying yes to everything to shifting to using the word no. And no doesn't necessarily mean forever, for the rest of our lives, but no may mean right now in this season. So understanding that sometimes we have to use that word no, and sometimes we have to use the word yes. Both can be empowering, but sometimes they're necessary, definitely necessary. Celebrating. We've got our 2 little puppies that are over there. They're adorned in their party gear. They don't look the happiest, but they're celebrating something. So we need to celebrate. As Lynn talked about, if you get up and you open the blinds, do a little I open the blinds dance today. That's it for the day, but guess what? I did it. Celebrating the wins, celebrating the important moments. Again, I refer back to Francine talking about that time that she needed to reincorporate herself into her family. So celebrations, what are we celebrating? Birthdays, special occasions. Maybe we're celebrating the fact that it's Friday and we've all made it to Friday and we're gonna have cake and ice cream. We don't always need a reason to celebrate, but it's important to do that because that gives us balance. That also allows us to celebrate even the small things in life. And then the last picture, there are two people sitting on a bench looking out at the water. It's a reflective moment for me. I know when I first saw this picture, I thought, wow, I would love to be there and love to be there with a friend, just to have conversation, just to talk about things that are going on, and to maybe even hear what that friend of mine is going through, right? So how are we able to support others in a way that allows them some self-care as well? So it's important to, as you take a look at all of these pictures, to be mindful. Mindful of how you care for yourself, mindful of maybe the areas that you feel depleted, and mindful of the ways in which you can also give yourself a boost and say, hey, I'm gonna take that nap. I'm not gonna do that load of laundry. I'm gonna lay on the laundry and I'm gonna take a nap right now. I've done that a time or two, so I'm speaking from experience. So creating an introspective self-care plan, we have arrived. This piece is critical. Again, an open format to say there is always room for change. There's always room to revise your self-care plan. So don't be afraid of just writing something down to say, I'm going to put this down for me, right? Once you write it down, it's not set in stone. There isn't some social worker that's going to come knocking on the door and say, hello, I'm the social worker who's making sure that your introspective plan is being followed. And on this date and time, you said you were going to do this. It doesn't have to be written in stone forever because it may change, and that's okay. So creating this self-care plan, we want to ensure that it's goal specific. What am I planning to do? We want it to be time specific. When will I do this? And maybe even for how long? Does it make sense? Because that's really important, right? If you're setting a goal and you know it doesn't make sense, then it needs to be revamped. Can I accomplish the goal? Doesn't mean right now in this moment, because you're setting the goal, but at some point, will I be able to accomplish this or a portion of it? How will the goal benefit me, right? So for example, if I say, by November 1st, I'm going to run a mini marathon because I need to be healthier. I need to get exercise, and I'm going to train 8 times a week. All right. It's goal specific for sure, time specific, but does it make sense? Do I have the capacity to exercise and train 8 days a week or 8 times a week? 8 days, definitely not, because there's only 7 days in the week. But am I able to train 8 times a week? No, it doesn't make sense for me. Can I accomplish it? Probably not, because it doesn't make sense. So I know that it'd be beneficial, yes, maybe for me to get exercise and to work out. So it may need some fine tuning. What am I saying to myself about creating this goal? Well, right now I'm saying, NaKaisha, let's get serious. You're not doing that, right? You're not going to do that. And so when we know in creating our goals, right, for our self-care plan, when we're creating this plan, if I'm not connected to that goal, if I know that I can't accomplish it, then we need to do some revamping. All right, that's that last piece. Am I excited about the goal? Do I feel connected to the goal? You want to be excited about your self-care plan.
Well, it's interesting as I look through this, and I always think about language and how certain words make an impact for others. Some of us may not relate to the word goal, but we might relate to the word steps or whatever. And but so your last one is, do I feel connected to this goal? That's the big key question for someone like myself, who I am such a narrative person. And so if you give me that linear list, I will do it, but I like to kind of weave the story around it. And so as I continue to work from a place of reflection and looking at my own self-care, sometimes it's spontaneous. And I didn't even know that what I was doing was so rewarding. And the example is that because we've been home so much, I have enjoyed my back porch. It's a screened-in back porch. It's filled with a lot of my husband's obsession, I would say, to blue glass. But because it's blue, it's very soothing. And we have a little water fountain in it too. It's not very big at all. It'll hold like maybe 4 lawn chairs. That's about it. But that's become my place. Is if I can get out there in the morning, I can have breakfast, or I can just stop. I didn't even know that was part of my self-care plan until I connected the benefit of doing this. Slowing down, taking a pause, breathing. The other day I was practicing my stretches, and my neighbor saw me through the greenery, and she started laughing, and she goes, "All I see is a hand." So we shared laughter spontaneously. So I want to encourage people that yes, this is an excellent way to create our self-care plan and allow for the spontaneity too.
What really resonates here with me is, as a social worker, as a coach, and even, if initially when Lynn asked me to be a part of the study, and then, after each session, it went back to the time, and I thought, oh, if I do that in between sessions, I'm not going to have enough time for the next client, or how can I get so many clients in a day if I've got to take the time? So it was always about somebody else. And as we're looking down through here, I keep seeing the, will it benefit me? What am I saying? And I'm thinking, oh, there is an I. Oh, it does say self-care, but I know for me, it is always about what I can do, what my self-care can do for others. And so it really, again, the reflection study, as well as what you're talking about now, NaKaisha, it really is all about me. Which I know I'm talking to the choir. It usually is about what we can do for everybody else.
And that's that critical piece as to why we felt it be important to incorporate this piece of self-care. I know you guys have been to hundreds of other conferences and they talk about self-care. There's a self-care workshop or a breakout session or whatever. But being in this field, being social workers and the provider for everyone else, not just in the work that you do, but your friends know it, right? Your family know it. Somehow magically, when we go out into the world, whether it's the grocery store, the gas station, the post office, other people know it. And I'm like, how do I get this social work stamp off of my head? Because they gravitate and they know that we're helpers. So we're giving you permission today to take time for you and reflect and build your self-care plan for you. It's okay to be selfish. It took me forever to learn that. And I thought, well, I can say no and like people won't be mad or people will still love me, or like I can just not do something and be okay. We don't give ourselves enough permission, right? We don't give ourselves permission to not, right? Or to do, kind of depending upon what it is. So Lynn and Francine shared some really important pieces to this. Lynn saying, I got to feel connected to this, because if I don't, it probably isn't going to happen. And that's why this piece is so critical. Constantly looking at your self-care plan. Because again, if you need to tweak it, you need to adjust it, you need to add something else in there, that's okay, right? But we want to ensure that you understand, take care of you. The better care that we take care of us, the more that we have to give to others when we're ready to do that. So here we go, the 3 keys to introspection as a life tool. I'm going to repeat myself, that introspection it should carry you on through life. It's not just something for today. It's not something that you're going to say, oh, I'm going to do that on Wednesday or Thursday or Friday. And then after that, I don't need to do this introspection anymore. I don't need to critically self-reflect. I don't need that. I just needed to do it one day. This is a life thing. We want to ensure that we're going to be happy. We want to ensure that we're going to be healthy, mentally healthy. We've got to make sure that we're using the things that we have at our disposal to keep us moving forward. So our 3 keys to introspection. Number 1, introspect on a regular. Again, doesn't have to be every day. There may be a nice fenced in or, porched in patio that you've got in your back house, on the back of your house that you say, I'm going to go back there and just kind of reflect for a minute. Once a week. What this does is it allows you to be able to check in with yourself and see where you stand. Where am I at? How am I feeling? What am I thinking? Do I need to do more or less? Or do I feel like things are good right now? Number 2 says change direction upon introspection. All right. I don't know about you. I'll relate it back to that truck that was crashed into that tree, right? If we think about the direction in which we're going and it no longer works for us, change direction. If we're in a car and we realize, oh my goodness, I'm going south and I need to be going north, we got to change direction to get to where it is that we're going. So if you determine that something needs to change, adjust it. You're in control of this self-care plan. You're in control of you. Make that change because, again, change isn't always bad. It's not always bad. And number 3, this is probably, should have maybe been number 1. These are in no particular order. But now that I'm sitting here, I'm like, wait a minute, that should probably be number 1. Be kind to you. I need to be as best as I can to me. One of the things that I remember sharing with the client some years ago was how you treat yourself is a clear roadmap and indication to how you will allow others to treat you, right? So if we are not kind to ourselves, it's going to be difficult for us to allow other people to respect our boundaries, to be kind to us if we're not doing those things for ourselves. Being kind to yourself comes in many different forms. If we think about that panda bear in that tree, I keep going back to that panda bear. I must need a nap. But that panda bear is like relaxing. That panda bear is chilling. He's in the trees like, I ain't coming down. I'm saying no, I'm not doing it. But be kind to yourself. So critical. So 3 keys to introspection as a life tool. Introspect on a regular. Change direction upon introspection. So if you see something that isn't right, you've got the ability to change it. And number 3, be kind to you. This slide, I think, is critical for all of us as social workers, as providers, to get help. There may be times that we ourselves need to reach out to a person just for a little extra support, for guidance, whether it's a coach, a therapist, psychiatrist, if we're really in a bind, and maybe you do need to call a crisis unit. Okay, we're not used to saying I need help because we're used to helping. You know, I always throw out that question: who helps the helpers? Who helps us? So we're not able to answer that if we don't even know maybe the areas in which we need help because we haven't done this introspection. So making sure that you know where you are, and if you need a little extra support, it's okay. It's okay to get help. It's okay to get help. This quote here by Hans says, "It's not the stress that kills us, it's our reaction to it." How many of us know how truly stressed we are, right? Do we know where we stand? There were times, I can honestly say, in my career that I didn't know that I was stressed until I walk into a room and people are like, they're looking like this, or they're like, are you tired? Is something going on? And I'm like, no, what do you mean? Everything's great. Well, you're just a little snippy. Sometimes I get that from home. Sometimes the people in my own house say that. You're a little cranky today. That's when I have to say, I'm not getting defensive. Let me take a step back and do a little check and see where I am. So remember that if you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling overworked, take the time to step back and figure out what it is that you need during this time. Little duckies, we've gone from cute little panda in the tree to ducks in the water. I want you guys to take just a minute to reflect on what you see. Where did your mind go when you saw this slide pop up? What was the first thought that you had? Where is it bringing you to now? You know, the unique thing about this slide is that many of us will look at it and we will all see something very different, right? I'm going to ask Lynn and Francine what they saw when they saw the slide.
Well, my initial thought is that I always think of the duck looking calm on top and really paddling like anything to keep afloat and looking so calm.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my MO. Like, I'm good in a crisis, and then 5 days later I'll fall apart.
Yeah.
But what I first noticed were the swans and just the beautiful creatures that they are, and just to take that tranquil time. And then I actually could feel the water. It was, I love being near water. And so that's what I saw.
My mind went the same place yours did, Lynn. It was that, oh, look how tranquil. Oh, wait, what do they do underneath that water that gets them to where they're going? They're pedaling like crazy. And that's how, you know, I was feeling before the study that I did, and then recognizing that I was always paddling and paddling and paddling and not stopping to reflect. And so that's what came to mind for me. And then recognizing that the two swans in front, their reflections are right there. And so if we just pause enough and look, we can see our reflection. And to truly stop to reflect on what we're seeing and how we're looking at ourselves.
Fantastic. Which again, Francine, goes back to that self-reflection, right? That critical self-reflection, that introspection. And I'll just be honest, I didn't even see their reflections until you said something just now. Didn't even see it. So again, that just goes to show how one picture, we can probably see 50 or 60 different things that people could point out that no one else would see. And that goes back to how it relates to each of our lives, right? Sometimes people can't see that we're paddling like crazy underneath, right? To get to the finish line or just to make it through the day. But the importance of this is to understand that taking that time to be mindful of the space that we're in and where we're at is going to allow us, all of us, to be the best us that we can, to continue to do good work. Because I know that this field is needed, more so now than ever before. There are people hurting, there are people needing support. There are people that they're wayward, they don't know what to do next. And we are given the blessing of being able to be social workers and go forth and help in any way that we can.
Well, as we're wrapping up, I'm just aware of, those are great words to end on. And I think we have a contact information for each of us. I just really appreciate that I was joined by two exceptional colleagues, to bring forth this work. So thank you. Anything else you guys want to say in our last minute here?
Go forth and keep doing good work.
Yeah, take the time. Make the time. Make the time.